Do you think Biden's intern time traveled and cheated to build his island?
Yes, absolutely. How did they get that many dog houses to make up the little houses?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Everything in Poderation, because sometimes the internet can be too much. I am Robert, and I am happy living my life on the Animal Crossing island that I visit every day.
I'm Daly, and I'm calling you out as a fucking liar. I know that you haven't been playing.
Hi, I'm Colin, and I'm a time traveler in Animal Crossing because fuck only playing that game for 30 minutes a day.
I see you're a cheater.
That's cheating.
They
patched that. They patched that. You can't go into the future to hang out in different holiday times. So there.
That's funny that you assume I'm never going to play this game again, Daly.
Wait,
Guys, why won't you play Animal Crossing with me?
Wait, hold on. Okay, wait. So when you change time and then you boot up the game, does like a time wizard show up and is like, I see what you're trying to do?
I don't. It's just another day. If you be like, I want to do Halloween 2021. It won't. It's just another day in fall. It's not the event of the holiday.
Interesting. So yeah, if you haven't seen the title of this episode on your feed or on YouTube, so we're going to talk about some of the more recent changes that Nintendo has made when it comes to Animal Crossing rules and how it's used by entities. So as you may or may not know, if you've lived on this earth for the past 9 months at least, you've been suffering from two things. One, just general pandemic sadness, and two, the joy that Animal Crossing can bring you on the Switch. Probably. Maybe.
It saved me.
Maybe.
It saved me. I don't know what this year would have been like. It would have been even worse, obviously, but Animal Crossing was that safe haven that showed up right as things started to get hairy and was like, hey, just forget about some stuff and pick fruit off of trees and talk to animals. And I'm like, yes, I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, come join our virtual game where you can use your shovel and dig in this spot to get a fossil. No, the other spot. No, not that spot. This spot over here. You want to aim for this spot.
God forbid you have Joy-Con drift.
Jesus. What was crazy about the launch of this game too is I remember when this game came out in March
23rd.
March.
I had it on my calendar.
Tattooed on her forehead.
Yes.
Right around the time that game came out, or maybe a few weeks before, maybe even up to a month before, there were people actually petitioning for Nintendo to release it early. Because pandemic anxiety and impending doom was looming, and everyone's like, please, for the love of God, Nintendo, we need something to take our minds off of this darkness abyss that our lives about to become. And they didn't, of course. Right. But I remember a lot of people on Twitter talking about it.
But when does Nintendo ever listen to the fans? Even when they're desperately asking for new horizons.
Okay, but they listened with this latest patch, at least as far as you can sit down. You can sit down now, like on the ground.
Riveting.
See, okay. Fuck you guys.
Insert
it
sample
changes
of
everything.
Here.
So, as we've established, right, Animal Crossing has been kind of a big deal, just all over the internet. Like, even people who aren't #gamers play Animal Crossing, right? Because it's just cash, it's fun, it's chill, and it's to the point where some businesses got wind of this whole Animal Crossing thing, and there are a lot of businesses who've been getting in on that cash monies, or not even cash monies, but just trying to interact with their consumers.
Some guerrilla marketing tactics, if you will. Mm-hmm. There are gorillas in the game. They can be your villagers.
Now, on November 19th, so about a couple weeks ago now, Nintendo published a thing called Animal Crossing New Horizons Usage Guidelines for Businesses and Organizations, right? Woo. Which is, it in retrospect now, it kind of feels like, oh, I'm surprised this didn't show up sooner, right? Because I mean, like, you see so many businesses marketing stuff within Animal Crossing or throughout Animal Crossing. But some of these rules are, to be expected, right? Like if you're going to use Animal Crossing, make sure what you're portraying or saying is very family friendly, very safe, very fun, nothing extreme like violence or pornography or politics. Wait. Oh, that does say, please also refrain from bringing politics into the game.
Yeah, run back to tape.
Also, no politics, please.
No politics. Interesting.
No politics in my game.
Yeah, no politics on this island.
Not on this island.
Who do you think we are? Ubisoft?
No, remember, Ubisoft is also very apolitical.
Who do you think we are? Activision?
Well, they're also apolitical. They just support the military-industrial complex by championing the military.
Yeah, and also USA good, every other country bad.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, no, most video games aren't political, really.
No, absolutely not. Cyberpunk 2077? No.
No politics in my video games. So yeah, this might ruffle the feathers of some people out there who are very adamantly deluded in thinking there are no politics in my video games, right? But if there is any major video game out there that can truly earn that title of no politics here, I feel like Animal Crossing is one of them, right?
Surprisingly,
closest you can get.
Yeah. It's the worst you would run into is being like Tom Nook is part of the bourgeoisie and needs to be overthrown or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Tom Nook is in a way a metaphor for crushing capitalism.
Yes.
So there you go. There is
forever in debt.
Yeah, and the beauty of what politics is that you can kind of relate anything to politics just because of how expansive it is. But what makes these rules so interesting to me, and the reason it stood out to me when I saw it published, right, was not too long ago, I do remember an old white man had an island of his own, and he is now president-elect.
Biden HQ.
Mm-hmm.
Dream code in the description below before it's gone. It might be gone already. I got on today. It's a pretty impressive island. He has Raymond, the cat that everyone is thirsty over. Coveted Raymond. Apollo, the bald eagle, is there. Makes sense. Tangy, the orange cat, maybe follows. It's a nice island. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, and for clarification, we are recording this 2 weeks in advance, so Daily might have gotten on today in our time space. Where you're hearing this, who knows? I mean, who really knows what the world is going to be like 2 weeks from now?
Let this be our time capsule, where Biden HQ still existed, and Animal Crossing, you could still sit down. I hope they don't patch that out. I sincerely hope that sitting down on the ground does not get patched out.
I mean, what an interesting byline, though, and possible history books, Like, video games are used as a guerrilla marketing tactic for politics. Like, wow. And so the thing about the Joe Biden Island, from what I could see about it, was, yes, it is a very well put together island. And if you have any experience at all with Animal Crossing, you'll know that doing literally anything in Animal Crossing takes an eternity and a half. So I would imagine he probably had a small team of hip millennials or hip Gen Zers that were going in there and building up this island all nice.
Interesting that you're walking into this with the assumption that Joe himself didn't do this entire island.
Dude, if Joe, I'm sorry, but if Joe Biden did this entire island by himself, it wouldn't be done yet. He would be dead before it was finished.
God,
maybe that's his secret. He's just really good at Animal Crossing.
Yeah, I mean, he's a busy guy. I imagine Joey B is a very busy guy, but could you imagine just like a day after campaigning and giving speeches on the trail, he comes back home and he's about to like lay in bed and go to sleep. And then he turns to his wife, he's like, here's the deal. I've still got to get my hour of Animal Crossing in today, or else I'm going to be failing the people.
Oh my gosh.
And by the people, I mean my villagers. Raymond, I will never disappoint
Raymond, I will not disappoint
Listen, I'm not going to fill this island with any malarkey.
I mean, that's what he says when you go there.
Yeah,
it's just, he says no malarkey. Right? He says no malarkey.
I am an American president. Okay?
Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I mean, just in and of itself, the fact that a US presidential candidate, quote unquote, made a virtual video game island, right? That I think is in and of itself noteworthy. Like, could you imagine the kind of discussion we could have if there was also like a Trump island? Like everything else bad about Trump aside, the fact that there would be two presidential candidates with two warring islands in a fake video game, that'd be fascinating.
Because they are warring. It would absolutely be like they were. The thing about Joe's Island was that it just seems like kind of patriotic island number one. Like there's obviously all the Joe Biden signs and Biden Harris signs all around, and there's like a polling station, and then the house is like HQ where there's just like notes and computers everywhere. But other than that, it wasn't like very targeted propaganda. At least it was just like vote instead of like this specific issue. Here's our take on the island for everyone to see.
I just have a question for Daily, because I think let's put our cards on the table here if it hasn't been apparent through all the subtext and subtweeting we've been doing for the past 10-20 minutes. I don't like Animal Crossing much. I think it's great if you do. I'm not a big fan. I'm going to out Colin as well. He's also not a big fan of the game itself.
What gave that away, Robert? And why would you?
We never became friends on Animal Crossing, just so you know, Colin, I'm pretty sure. Like I at least went to I went to Robert's Island at least twice, maybe once. Yeah. I don't know, but I never saw your island.
Right.
And mine's probably in disrepair by now.
So here's where I'm coming from with this. When we decided, we're going to do this episode, I thought, okay, let me boot up my Switch, fire up Animal Crossing for a bit, just to kind of like reacquaint myself with everything. I like super deleted it off my Switch. That's where I'm at in my Animal
Very
Crossing.
Technical term, super deleted, yes.
Super, like, it's gone. I mean, I just need to go to the store and re-download it, but like, who's got time for that? So that's why I want to ask you, Daily, as both a person who has played Animal Crossing more than
every day
since
for the past
April.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And two, has visited Joe Biden's island, right? Just like as a citizen, as a gamer, how did it feel going to an island that is definitely, I guess, politically charged in a way? Like you're going here because you were curious about what Joe Biden's message is. Like, how was all that? How was that experience? I
didn't learn anything. Like, as far as like his stances on anything other than like be sure to get out and vote. It was just kind of a Joe Biden themed island. It was very well laid out. I did find out one thing about him is that he likes trains. They made like a little train station, and then in the basement of Biden HQ is just like a train room, like with model trains like on the tables that like run around. That's an item in Animal Crossing. So that led me to a rabbit hole of looking up like Biden likes trains. He likes model trains. But other than that, other than noticing like the White House is the museum, which I don't know if there's any subtext there other than like it's just a stately White House looking building that they were able to put in the distance far enough to make it look suggestive of the White House. It's just a really well made island that has a lot of Joe Biden swag on it. That's about it.
Well, he himself has so much swag.
Lots of swag.
Sit down.
The glasses. There is a poster on the island of like the what are those called? Aviators that he wears.
Okay, so that's where we are with the Animal Crossing Joe Biden island, right? So now that you are off of that dream island, I don't know, do you feel politically charged? Do you feel radicalized?
Oh, wow. Sure. I could see, no, I really don't, but I could see maybe like being more incentivized to vote because there is like literally they built a polling place in Animal Crossing, and it's like if they can do that, I can get my butt down to local polling place number 1.
Right.
But not, I don't, there's not, again, there's no real super strong message other than Joe Biden.
That's interesting. So as far as the policies with politics in Animal Crossing goes and things like that. So on Joe Biden's island, there's nothing to kind of allude to his policies or actually talk about any sort of debate or referencing like Trump in any sense or anything like that.
Not other than the presence of Tangy, which you would have to like really do some mental gymnastics to be like, Tangy actually represents Trump because orange, and Tangy lives on this side of the island, which no, there really isn't. It just looks like a fan. Like, I would believe it just to be like a fan made island for Joe Biden as opposed to like an official thing. It's just like the same thing could be made for like Britney Spears. Like, it's just all Britney Spears related like custom items and stuff. Which vote Britney 2021. Vote Britney.
I mean, yeah, I would. I mean, probably
it's
not.
It's Britney, bitch. 2024.
That's her slogan.
Well, that's who the daily the Wilhelm Mako platform
right
is running against.
No, I don't want to run against her.
Well, yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? You got to have your cat as your vice president to run as a you got to run for the furries, get the furries in your base.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just make Britney like Secretary of State or something? Like, maybe I'll get her to come on my side.
I don't know if I would hire her though.
Britney bitch for Wilhelm cabinet.
I hear she's pretty toxic, so I don't know.
He said it. But no, the serious question though, is there? So do we know how harshly that they're going to be enforcing these new no politics policies? Like, do we have any idea? Because like, I wonder if it's going to be one of those things where like, if you type in Biden, if you type in Harris, if you type in Trump, if you type in Pence, it's going to be like, no, you can't.
Like, those are the new
say that
banned words.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't say that. And like, I don't know how they would do any sort of like signage or like anything, any created designs on your island, if they would actually be able to pick up on that. But if you made like a Biden Harris sign for your island or whatever, would that be a banned thing now too, if they can?
Well, so keep in mind, these guidelines are only for businesses, right, and organizations. So your average person, like if you personally supported Biden Harris and you made a Biden Harris sign in your island, like you as an individual, whatever, right? What they're focusing on here, I guess, I mean, I would assume if we're talking about businesses and organizations from a political standpoint, most of that is probably going to be political parties, like Joe Biden's platform and his organization.
So they're basically saying no lobbying, more or less.
I suppose. Like, I would assume in the future, like if we're talking 2024 and New Horizons is still really big at that time, the two presidential candidates, or hopefully more, but let's be honest, it's America too, would not be able to create their own, like, join Democrat island, join Republican
like
island.
The official, like, Republican Party island, or the official Democratic Party island.
Right.
Well, the Republican island is what the hell? I always think Parlor. That's the Republican island now, guys.
Nice. Yeah, let's signal boost that. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting, and it's also kind of like, you're right though. You bring up a good point. What is Nintendo gonna do about it? Right?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to just shut down Biden Island, which already exists? Are they not going to retroactively apply this policy? What's going to happen if in 2024 the Democratic nominee and or Biden himself decide, let's make another island, baby? Like, is Nintendo going to be like, don't?
Yeah. I mean, because presumably an individual could just be like, hey, like I said, like, hey, I'm a really big fan of Joe Biden. Let's make a Joe Biden themed island. And be able to just be like, this is just like a fan work. This is in no way affiliated with like a specific politician or business or organization. It is going to be very, I don't know how they would enforce it at this point, other than because like things like nudity or things being vulgar are more or less obvious. Like, y'all, people make dresses in New Horizons, like custom designs, so that it looks like you're either naked or wearing a bikini, because you can't do either of those things in the game.
What?
Shame for shame.
Man, these people showing off ankles in my kids' game.
Whoa. You can run around in your underwear, but your underwear is like a tank top and boxers. Very loose boxers. Pretty tame.
Pretty tame.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I do I mean, I think the idea, I would see why you don't want to have something like this in a game like Animal Crossing. Just to kind of think worst case scenario, right? I think that it potentially could be like a dangerous precedent in a way, because you're using like a sort of platform that does tend to skew towards younger people, right? And that exudes a sort of influence, and that is like, yeah, it's an obvious ploy for marketing and trying to look hip and cool, right? And that's something especially these older politicians really had to put a lot of effort into in order to pull the younger voting base, I would imagine. But do you guys think that like this is like a dangerous thing? Because I could see how it could be dangerous, I guess, right? Like I was basically being advertised to in my game that I've been playing, and I'm a teenager, right? Next thing you know, like I'm being, I feel like I'm being influenced into voting for this person because they like Animal Crossing. I don't know. How does that hit you guys?
I don't know. I would be interested in seeing how Nintendo then handles like custom drawings that you can do in like Splatoon. Like for the chat bubbles and stuff. Like I know that, words and etc. are banned when you're typing them out, but you can draw quite a bit without having to type anything at all. So as far as like trying to protect children from those messages, it's like how much reach do they have for that?
Yeah.
Right.
And plus I think that weirdly gets into a discussion of, is Animal Crossing a pseudo social network in a way, right? Because if you look at Facebook as an example, it's a similar idea of technically anyone and anything, any corporation can make an account, make a Facebook page, and spread their message, right? Usually if it's an individual, that message is like, I ate cake today, and like that's it. Okay, cool, whatever. But if that individual's like Nike, that message is obviously going to be
just do it.
No, I'm not. Don't say their slogan. They didn't pay us.
Oh shit! Sponsor us, please.
Make it happen by Nike.
Give me some Spider-Verse Jordans.
But that's kind of the same idea, right? Animal Crossing is obviously you have to jump through way more hoops than just creating an account and then being able to post what you want. But the concept is the same, where Animal Crossing is an experience, and then I, as the corporation representing Joe Biden, have decided to create an experience within it that represents my message of vote for Biden. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think if it's going to stop people from doing it, and that is an interesting thought that Animal Crossing could be looked at as a social media platform, because in a sense it kind of is. I mean, you can visit other people's islands. It's essentially like their profiles. It's something that they personalize. It's not necessarily giving away direct personal information.
Yeah, you can send each other things back and forth and send postcards that never get answered. Robert,
sorry,
I've sent you shit. I've absolutely sent you things.
Well, sorry, it doesn't send me notifications on things that matter, like my phone. But
whoa,
you could Nook phone. But okay.
What?
Nook phone.
Nook phone.
Nook phone. Yeah, I do think it's kind of odd, right? But let's not say it's so much like Facebook, right? I mean, I know I'm the one who kind of made that comparison, but it's not as bad as Facebook, because Facebook can be like, I'm going to peek into what this flat earther group is all about.
Oh my God.
Then all of a sudden I'm getting Plandemic in my feed, and Biden didn't win the presidency legally in my feed, etc. And it sends you down this rabbit hole. Oh, what's up with QAnon? Like, Facebook is kind of built to get you to that end because of Al Gore's rhythm. With
Right.
Animal Crossing, it can just be like, you have to super duper opt in to seeing the message of, I'm going to Joe Biden's island to vote for, or to get the message of, I want to vote for Joe Biden, right?
Yeah.
Like, theoretically, you would never run into the message vote for Joe Biden unless you opt into the space where you're pretty cognizantly aware that you're probably going to get that message.
Yeah. Although there is a function that could kind of put people on that rabbit hole of like seeing certain kinds of content, as far as when you go to someone else's island that you don't know, that you're not friended to, you're doing that through a quote unquote dream. It's like a function to just see totally random islands or specific ones that you found the code for. So in that sense, you could just be dropped into like a QAnon island, or like a different Joe Biden island or something like that. And maybe it's because Nintendo guarantees that level of randomness that's where the concern is, that there are people that wouldn't be like opting in, as you said, that they would just be suddenly exposed to some strange messages.
That's interesting. But then why make the distinction between, because like an individual could make an island full of like swastikas and pro-Hitler imagery
Sure
if they
could.
wanted. Yeah. So why gear these rules only toward businesses if that's their goal?
I don't know. I think that then wouldn't it be reactionary then? It would be, I mean, it feels reactionary.
Oh, yeah.
If you kind of, if you kind of narrow it down like that, because just the fact that this happened sent Nintendo into like, hey, we need to have a meeting about this.
Mm-hmm. We
can't let this happen because we don't want this to become a place that is, nothing but politics.
Yeah.
And so, as an aside, I want to get meta for a second.
Do it.
So imagine, if you will, that, Animal Crossing has been going for, I don't know, a year or two, a couple years, and they can continue to support it because it's essentially a live service game.
Mm-hmm.
But they go like kind of meta with it, where they do put, and maybe this is already kind of a thing, but they do kind of put essentially a social media platform inside of Animal Crossing, where it's like you can become friends with other people that run their islands in the game, right? Whether you know them in real life or not.
Face Nook, TM, Face Nook.
TM,
Nook, that's great. Nook Book.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And next thing you know, they build an algorithm to go with this social media site to start advertising you different items that you can buy in the Animal Crossing world to decorate your island with.
Nookazon.
Yeah.
Nookazon is a thing. Nookazon is absolutely a thing.
There's also the Amazon Nook. Or no, that was Barnes and Noble, right?
Yeah,
no,
it is. Hold up. I worked there, I swear. No, there is unofficial communities like that. With Nookazon, it's literally just operated out of like different Discords where it's like, hey, I need this item, and you pay for that with Nook Miles tickets.
Right.
Because that's the only exchangeable kind of thing.
Right. I know there are third-party sites that are about like the stock market. So like if someone has really good prices for the stock market that day, they kind of like post there and are like, hey, I'm going to open my island and all that.
Yeah.
But that those are solutions, or those are examples of the market finding the solution, not the provider providing the solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you're purporting here, Colin, is what if Nintendo was like, we're going to create an algorithm in Animal Crossing that will also include microtransactions?
Well, not necessarily. Well, maybe that could be a thing, but like I'm saying, just like stuff that you could purchase within the microcosm that is Animal Crossing.
So like just spending your bells
like you could,
that you earn via
exactly.
selling seashells by the seashore.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or this person that you know has turnip prices at this price.
Mm-hmm.
Send them a turnip buying request or whatever, however that works.
I mean,
I don't know. Just a thought.
I think it's an interesting thought exercise, but I'm having trouble kind of making that connection between, like, even if Nintendo made this pseudo social media, I can't imagine it too much advertising random islands to you. I feel like at most it would say like, oh, hey, you're friends with Daily and she just added this to her island. Do you want to go see it?
Right.
Yes. It wouldn't be like, it wouldn't be like, hey, Skinhead 421
oh my God.
just added a new swastika to his island. Would you like to see it? Like, probably not.
No, I mean, I would imagine that given the precedent that we basically themed this episode around, that Nintendo has set, I don't think they're going to let something this nefarious happen in their game from the sound of it. Like, I don't think even if they did create something like that, they would probably be just a vague thing to get you to spend your bells on certain things that they think you might like, or go to someone else's island. I don't think it would be as nefarious as like, oh, these guys are pushing a fucking agenda and sharing. sharing far right articles and
Right.
whatever else, you know. But I don't know. It's just an interesting thought exercise for sure.
Mm-hmm. I kind of wanted to widen the scope a bit here, right? Because I guess the reason why Nintendo has to set these boundaries is obviously because more and more businesses are getting on board with this whole Animal Crossing as a pseudo social media type of thing, right? I remember the first thing I saw where it like really cemented to me, like, okay, like even the rich folks and even the mainstream organizations are catching wind of this Animal Crossing thing. The first time I noticed it was when the Detroit Lions. Do you remember sports, guys?
What?
Sports.
The Detroit Lions, they announced their 2020 season, and they did it on Twitter in May via a video of Tom Nook. Like he's giving, he like when you log in first every day, like he gives his little speech or whatever.
Isabel, you were so early game, boy.
I know,
but okay.
But here's the thing.
But
The
it's Tom
video
Nook,
of
okay.
it is Tom Nook. The video of it is Tom Nook. I don't want to fucking hear it. So it's him. He's doing the wibbly wobbly speech, but all the text bubble is saying like, "Oh, hey, the Detroit Lions have announced their new schedule," and then he just kind of keeps saying the rest of it, and it's like, okay, that might not hit with a lot of people who have not played Animal Crossing, but clearly their marketing department or something made that cognizant decision of there are enough people who follow us on Twitter that will probably understand what this is about and be able to digest the information through this medium.
Yeah, I can totally see where Nintendo would be seeing stuff like that and just worried that eventually Animal Crossing is going to become certainly more niche, but in some communities, just like that extra little graphic that you put at the end where it's like, and here's my island code, like come to my island, see, like my merch or something, because streetwear certainly has found a comfy home in making, custom designs on the various patterns for clothing in Animal Crossing. I've absolutely looked through, custom made stuff by certain artists that I like. You see it on Twitter all the time as far as like, hey, I made this specific shirt from like this anime, or this, I reveal myself to be a weeb over and over again, or this dress that people were taught, the blue, black, gold, white dress is in Animal Crossing, because of course it is.
Of course. And it's still just as mysterious. No one really knows what color it is.
No, you don't.
It's actually a light fuchsia.
Oh man, let's just bring a whole different dimension in here. But I can see where Nintendo would worry about that becoming, so every day that they don't have control over that anymore. And we all know that Nintendo likes control.
What?
They do.
Whatever happened to Pokemon? What was it? Pokemon Radium? Pokemon that fan?
Oh, you? It was something with a U, wasn't it?
Pokemon Iridium, I think.
Maybe.
I don't know, but she did.
Much like most fan projects under the Nintendo IP.
How dare you?
Yeah, and some certain Smash tournaments and whatnot. Yeah. So I know this is probably like 2 weeks late, but whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. So I think it's important to talk about too that, and now that Nintendo is cracking down on this sort of thing and kind of getting into because Animal Crossing is kind of veering into a little bit of being a social media platform. I think this is them getting out in front of the whole like, hey, just to remind you, this is still private property, right? Like this game, and this is not a free speech platform. Like this is something that we own, and we're gonna tell you what goes and what doesn't. Because
as a business, they're free to do that. They would be absolutely free to be like, no Biden islands, but Trump islands are allowed, or you know, they could have done something about even beyond the scope of America. A lot of digital protests took place about Hong Kong on Animal Crossing islands, because there's so few platforms that people actually have to have those discussions and promote that cause.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, and people often forget, but a big area of contention right now, like places like Facebook and Twitter, are not free speech platforms. They are platforms that are privately held by, private companies.
Right.
And what they say goes on those platforms. If something doesn't meet guidelines or something, is offensive,
doesn't even have to meet their
or,
guide. They can absolutely just be like, we change the rules suddenly because we're
boom,
privately held
done.
company. Fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Fuck you. You're done.
Yeah.
So.
And not to get too political about this, but
Wow.
isn't it kind of funny that most people who argue for free speech are usually the people saying mean shit in the first place? Like, usually they're the folks who are like, what, are you telling me I can't say the N-word? Like, it's my right to free speech. And it's
Free
like, okay, but hold on. Like, yeah.
Pretends to be shocked.
Yeah, the amendment technically, yes, gives you the right to say that, but then you have to deal with the societal consequences after that.
Yeah.
And usually they're not great.
It's just the government can't do anything about it. Everyone else can do whatever they want about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why when you take that argument to something that is privately owned, right, like Animal Crossing, you get both sides thinking the same thing. You get the same, like the one side who thinks it's free speech, I can say whatever I want, right? Even though this, like, Animal Crossing, Facebook, Twitter, etc., have even more grounds to say, no, you don't have free speech here.
Yeah. They could be super restrictive. And I think the fact that I can teach my Animal Crossing villagers to say bench, not bitch, bench. It's different. Mm-hmm. But regardless, mm-hmm. I could have Carmen say bitch instead. Like, thanks for the coconut juice, bitch.
Wow.
But Nintendo allows me to do that. Nintendo could be much more restrictive as a whole. And that's their prerogative.
They could be like MiHoYo, that Chinese company that made Genshin Impact, where you can't say Hong or Kong in the chat.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yep. No matter what country you're in, right?
I think so, yeah. So, I mean, that is technically a restriction of free speech. Technically, it's all MiHoYo. Like, they have the right to do that. That's, I mean, I don't agree with it personally, but you don't see me telling them, oh, you're restricting my right to free speech. I'm just saying, hey, maybe you should be able to type Hong Kong. I don't know.
Yeah, you should be able to type Hong Kong. But on the flip side too, a lot of the people, or at least the majority of the people in this country that are shouting like, hey, Facebook doesn't let me speak my mind and share things that it turns out to be false sources and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there's a difference between free speech and there's a difference between that and speech without consequence.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of these people, it's like they're saying, oh, I want speech without consequence. I want to be able to, say any anti-Semitic or any racist or any sort of bigotry, any sort of hateful anything.
Yeah. To go back to like the old media law class lesson, that the lawyer that was teaching our class specifically went, you can't go into a theater and yell fire without something happening. There's a reason why that's not allowed. There's going to be certain circumstances where it's just like, no, you can't do that. There's consequences.
Right. Yeah, so that was a crash course on what free speech really means from a bunch of very unqualified people that probably don't have much to say about it.
Hey, I have 2 unrelated degrees, okay?
Okay. Sure. That helps you. So now that, we've kind of gone through, okay, businesses like Animal Crossing, and now a politic did Animal Crossing, and now Nintendo's saying, hey, businesses, you can do what you want. Yeah, you can do what you want in Animal Crossing unless it's political, right? And I think this goes into the overall larger trend that I think we covered it before, or at least we touched upon it before, about how gamers as a whole, capital G gamers, hate politics in my video games.
Get out of my video games.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is getting more and more tired by the day.
It is. And to me, I find it so interesting that Nintendo is hopping into this, or even like recognizing like, okay, there has been a politics in our game. Now we're not going to have the politics in our game. Right. Because I didn't think when I saw Joe Biden Island, I didn't think like, I can't wait for every House representative and Senate representative and future presidential candidate to also make their Animal Crossing islands.
Because if they don't, I won't vote for them.
Sure. but also they're all probably mostly out of touch with video games. I'm not going to say all of them are, because I know there are a few who are like young and hip and cool and with it. But even those, like AOC didn't make a, at least I'm
She does
pretty
play
sure she didn't.
Animal Crossing. She
does
does
play.
not. She
Right.
did not make a
And-
public island though.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but she was also, and I mean, this gets into another discussion, but she was also on, I believe she was on Talking, like Animal Talking, which is Gary Whitta's Animal Crossing talk show.
She likes Animal
Um,
Crossing.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that gets into the extension of like, this isn't even like spreading politics within Animal Crossing itself. That's more like a meta talking about politics, but in Animal Crossing, but it's not, it's recording a talk, and it's not technically marketing inside. I don't know. It's really strange. It's a weird
The
phenomenon.
Animal
that-
Crossing fandom and the AOC fandom, there's an overlap for some reason.
hmm
Yeah, but I don't know where you get off with a talk show in Animal Crossing though, because I feel like there's maybe an exception to the rule. Like that's some interesting, like getting around the clause there.
You mean to say
Yeah.
that if Nintendo had an official Animal Crossing podcast or talk show, that would they then have on perhaps famous guests like AOC, who is inherently connected to politics because that's who she is.
A politician.
Right. Well,
She's a politician. Yes.
I'm saying that Nintendo themselves wouldn't, but the fact that this is a third party and he's doing this in Animal Crossing and having political, I mean, I don't know if this new policy applies, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, because Nintendo
Right,
has
yeah.
been known to, I think there was a more recent case of like there was a streamer that was like very themed on Pikachu, and they were like, hey, you're using our copyrighted material. Stop it. We're shutting you down. But that would be the question if that podcast would be on their radar because A, Animal Crossing, and B, politics.
Yeah, and I don't think we've had anything really similar to compare it to. I mean, the only thing I can think of is Red versus Blue, maybe. But even that's not even the same thing. That's just a TV show made in a game. And I think Bungie even gave them access to their engine and stuff like that. But I could be wrong on all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of brings it all full circle into thinking, if you're going to release something where user-generated content is going to be one of your driving factors, right? Because, like, I mean, daily level with me here. Animal
Yes.
Crossing is great, but how much better is it because you can find all of these things that people who aren't affiliated with Nintendo can make within the game?
Fantastic. Wonderful.
Mhm.
Amazing.
Right.
And once you give the people that agency, you open the floodgates. As much as you would like to control your message, which, you know, that's fine, right, to want to do that. But if you give them the tools where they can make their own messages, you've made your job infinitely harder, if not impossible, for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So to manage it and say, hey, no politics, that's going to be a tough needle to thread,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Mhm.
there are really big, obvious things like Joe Biden, right? Like, obviously, if you saw the headline, Joe Biden makes an Animal Crossing island, immediately you know, okay, that's political and bad, right? But if it was just like, okay, let's say Shaquille O'Neal, he made his own Animal Crossing island and whatever, right? Like, okay, cool. Like, I love Shaq. He's great. But then maybe one day on the island, he adds like a vote Harris, vote Biden sign. Is it suddenly political?
Hmm.
I mean,
That's
I
what
don't- I think
Nintendo
that
be
gets
saying.
around. Right. I mean, it's political, yes, because I mean, obviously, you're stating who you're voting for politically.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it goes around this policy because right, because he's not an organization or any sort of business.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, as a person with a following, sure, so that may be something. But like at the same time, like I don't think you or I were to, from the sound of it, make a Biden sign, put it on our islands. Nintendo's not going to come after us.
Yeah.
Right.
I think what it maybe is going to come down to also, I'm very pessimistic as far as like believing that they're going to be able to enforce this very much, except in the very, media heavy cases where it's like, hey, Joe Biden made an Animal Crossing island. As far as like if it doesn't go viral, if it's not like, 100 people have gone to this island, I don't think that they're not going to find it. It's a needle in a haystack. There's all these islands and they burn the map to the island every time you visit a new island. So
Right.
I think it's kind of, I don't want to say covering their ass, but it's covering their ass as far as just putting that message out there where it's like, hey, we're not explicitly, saying that politics good. We're not right. Putting our name attached to Joe Biden or anyone else.
So it's a nominal rule.
Yes.
Yeah, and I want to talk about Nintendo for a little bit too, because this is definitely in line with Nintendo wanting to be the kind of squeaky clean, family friendly, I guess, brand when it comes to gaming. If I recall right, I'm not sure if Nintendo even changes their logo for like Pride or anything like that, or like posts about BLM. I don't think they do any of that, right? Or they did. I don't remember.
I mean, they're able to kind of stay pretty squeaky clean by just being like, we're Nintendo, we're in Japan, and we're family friendly, and don't look at us.
Mario, we do the
Mario. Yay, Mario.
Yeah, so they are a company that is pretty gosh darn strict with their messaging. You know what I'm saying? They have a message, their primary and secondary messaging, and they stick to it. Right? Like they don't really move off of that. So it's not that really surprising that they're doing something like this stuff with Animal Crossing and politics.
The nice way to say it is that Nintendo has a very strong brand.
Yes. There we go.
I mean,
they want it to be unmarred by the changing, because they've been here for a long time and they will be here for a long time more. Presumably.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a post where Nintendo posts BLM or Pride, and then people in the replies in the comments like, I'm never buying Nintendo again. Fuck this. I've been a Nintendo family, not anymore.
What's so
Trump
sad
2020, blah blah blah.
It sounds like you're joking, but I know for a fact I've read those exact replies under like, I don't know, Bethesda changing their logo for June.
Oh yeah, June is always an
Xbox.
Interesting time to hang out on Twitter. With the like, as much as I like to make fun of like the corporate brands being like, oh yeah, we're totally into Pride, we swear, look at the rainbow.
Yeah, you wouldn't be if it was illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I do find it funny that there's two layers of, for one, it's so cynical to see all these brands change their logo just because it's okay to be gay for a month, apparently.
1 month.
But just that month.
That's all you get.
Yeah. But then on the flip side, because you changed your logo, I'm not buying your games ever anymore because you supported the gays once.
That one time in June, remember?
There's a lot of facets there. My point is, though, is like, Nintendo, I don't think they're going to be outwardly left-leaning anytime soon. I guess
they are
progressive.
Standing there stock still, as far as I'm concerned. They're not going to go either way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're just a very traditional company, almost to a fault, I would say, even when it comes to their technology in a lot of ways
and their gameplay design.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's working for them. They're making money, but I mean, damn. But a lot of gamers, they're keeping people, they're making money. So I guess it's one strategy. I guess that's the way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So if like we've been saying, if there's any big game company out there that's super apolitical, it would be Nintendo, if any, right? Because Nintendo has that strong identity of, we're for the kids. We got the Mario. We've got an Italian plumber that hasn't plumbed in years, and it's fun because you jump around and kick mushrooms as him, right? Like,
man, explaining Mario without like context, like to someone that has never ever heard of like a Nintendo game, is so wild.
He has an older brother that he beats the shit out of a lot, so he's abusive too.
He's the green one.
Not you. That's just called being siblings.
Fair. To a point. I think there is a line there. So yeah, Nintendo can be very apolitical, but what I find so interesting, right, is that this no politics rule, is so different than anything else when it comes to politics in the games industry. Because when you look at other games where some people say, oh, this is political, or, oh, this is straddling the line of politics, whether we're talking about the indie sphere or even the AAA sphere, it's usually like a metaphor or an allegory for something that is happening in the real world, right? Like the bad guy in Cyberpunk 2077 isn't Trump. It isn't literally Trump. And Biden doesn't literally help you out in it. Keanu Reeves does, but he's not there as a political figure. He's there as the Matrix Man.
Yeah.
But this in Animal Crossing, right? I mean, it's not like Joe Biden's literally visiting your island, but his literal name is attached to these things that are being perceived as political. It's not some hidden double layer meeting or a character that represents a very liberal leader of some kind, right?
Mhm.
It's
It's
actually
literally Joe Biden.
It's Joseph Gordon Biden.
Oh, that's what his middle
Yeah,
name
I mean-
is.
No,
Oh,
Joseph.
what is his middle name?
Robinette, I think.
I still can't tell if you're
I mean-
serious.
No, it's R. It's R. I think it's Robinette, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's political messaging in the most literal fucking sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's you can't it's politics. That is literal politics.
Right. As opposed to
in
a
the game.
thinly veiled, or because I mean, like even the really bad Ubisoft example with that, what was it? Was it Delta Squad, that mobile game
Oh God, yeah.
where they use the literal black power fist to symbolize the bad guys? Like that's still hidden. So that was bad preface, right? But that was still hidden behind this very thin veneer of we're not talking about the real world. We just happen to use that symbol accidentally.
Yeah.
We're sorry. We'll patch it out, right? It's not like they said we're literally fighting the Black Lives Matter movement, even though that's, maybe tacitly what a lot of people could have read
Construed from that,
Yeah.
certainly.
For sure. But they didn't literally say fuck BLM. Or even, like flip it, right? Let's put them in a good light. They didn't also say support BLM in that game.
Hmm.
Whereas with this Animal Crossing thing, it is literally saying support Joe Biden.
Literally.
Hmm.
That's what the signs are. There's no sign on the island that specifically says like support Joe Biden or vote Biden. It's all Biden, Biden Harris, the aviators,
Mhm.
more Biden.
All right, so let me ask you guys this. So you know how like on social media every year, of course, during Pride Month, we talked about earlier how Pride flags come out, Bethesda, Sony, Xbox, all those people, they put the Pride flags on their profile pictures and stuff like that. And of course, Nintendo doesn't do that. But obviously the biggest criticism that is thrown against those people is that, they're doing this just as a ploy because it's legal and they're applying to their base and, they're getting, they want to look
virtue
progressive.
signaling.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So is Nintendo in a sense getting in front of the 8 ball by not doing any of that, by not being outwardly like progressive and things like that? Yeah, like they're not like necessarily taking a stance, but then again, they are a video game company and they are kind of upfront and honest about like what it is they do, right? They're just kind of like, hey, like we know we're here to make money and make video games, right? And that's just what we do. And we're not gonna like try to act like we're some progressive, this or that politics, blah blah blah. We're just like we're here to make games and make money, and that's kind of it. Is that the way it comes off to you guys? What do you guys think about that?
So I've always believed, right, that saying no politics is a political stance. And
Sure.
I think this is coming off the same way, where Nintendo is trying to get ahead of the curve. And if we're going to use Pride Month as an example, right? Like, I don't go to Nintendo games expecting like I can't wait for my LGBT representation, or I can't wait for Nintendo to make me feel okay that there are gay people in the world, because that's not Nintendo's job, right? Nintendo's job is to give you a fun experience where you beat the fuck out of mushrooms, right? But at the same time,
against mushrooms, dude?
what does Mario have against mushrooms? What I want to know.
Stealing his girl.
So and that actually brings me to my point, right? Is that they're not trying to make this grand political statement because of the way the LGBTQ group is represented in American media. It's a weirdly political stance. Same-sex marriage is a political stance, whether you're for it or against it, which is really dumb because that shouldn't be political, right? But because it is in America, when you see Nintendo very comfortably and easily portraying heterosexual marriages and or loves, right? Like Mario going after Peach, Bowser trying to marry Peach, and both of those pairings are a man and a woman, holy matrimony, et cetera,
Link and Zelda,
exactly. So I mean, it's not political to say a man and a woman can get married, but then when you say it is political that a man and a man can get married or a woman and a woman can get married, that's where it gets murky. And if you are purposefully saying we're not going to talk about politics, so we don't have to talk about that, you are tacitly saying we're not going to represent same-sex marriage equally among non-same-sex marriage.
Well, one could argue though that like they can do it without making it a grand statement on different platforms. I couldn't give you necessarily a first party example.
I could,
to be fair, but okay.
So yeah, in the same vein as Robert, actions certainly speak louder than random Twitter Avi changes for me. And if there were a lot more like, I don't know, like dating sims or options to pursue people in Nintendo games, I would be looking more toward that than whether or not Nintendo changes its Twitter Avi during Pride. But I will say in that vein that there has been some, because there's none practically in video games as a whole, but there's been trans representation in Nintendo games of the past. In Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, Vivian is a trans character. It is written that way and is a trans girl in the entire game through. And she's very cute, and I like her hat.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I never played Paper
Mario. I didn't either.
So
yeah, no, I mean, so and Nintendo's like, it's not like they're openly opposed to political stuff. I mean, they have all the games that they have on their platform, right? You know, whether it's third party or first party, all those games have differing themes and messages, and none of those games, to my knowledge, are, you know, prevented from being on their storefront because they contain certain content aside from hardcore pornography, of course, or something like that. And actually, on that note too, Nintendo has actually been much more progressive about putting more, games of more sexual nature or like sexual themes on their platform, more so than actually Sony has been, because Sony has been catching a lot of flack in the games press about censoring a lot of their Japanese games that get brought over to the US.
Like Nekopara.
And you can play a lot of those same games on Nintendo platforms with a lot of those censors not being there, or without the censors rather.
Interesting. Are you sure that the Nekopara isn't censored on Switch?
I don't know about Nekopara specifically, as a disclaimer.
Their Nintendo DS double screen. We were talking about that. I don't know if we were recording or not during that time, but we were talking about the revolution of the Nintendo DS's double screen and games that were designed in order to facilitate that double screen. There was a third party game. I forget the name of it, but it's essentially you're in a middle school and you're hunting witches. You're hunting magical girls. And how do you discover a magical girl? You find their witch mark. You know, from like the olden days of like, this is where their pact with the devil was sealed. So you're literally just poking at middle schoolers in a very sexual way with your stylus and slowly undressing them. So Nintendo has played part in allowing that onto their platform, onto one of their consoles. So just saying, it exists. It's there. And I hate it. There were two games. There was a sequel.
It might be a little too far, but my point is though is, you know, so in a lot of area, I guess in a few ways, Nintendo is a little bit more progressive, you know, than other gaming platforms, and so maybe they are taking the right approach. I don't know. This is more of like, you know, just for my own knowledge, sort of investigative questioning, but like, I guess I don't know if that makes their way of going about things better than Xbox or PlayStation, but the fact that they still have a lot of these progressive ideals in their games, you know, but don't necessarily go out of their way to be upfront about it on any given marketing platform is interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess the reason this rubs me the wrong way is that when anyone says no politics, and this is definitely like me bringing something personal to the table, but when someone says no politics, I immediately assume that that's a code word for I don't want to talk about these radical views you have, like two men can get married, right? Like usually politics is code word for I don't want to hear about your views because I don't believe in your views. And that rose a red flag for me when it comes to a big company like Nintendo saying that. And I'm not going to, you know, throw the bathwater out with the baby and say like, oh, Nintendo is anti anything, right? Because I mean, they're anti politics right now.
but I don't know what that means in terms of what the company stands for when it comes to specific political issues, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
They're almost just like anti-strong stand, other than Nintendo's baseline values.
Right. Where my worry comes, though, with this is this move from Nintendo is going to affirm the views that a lot of anti-politics gamers have, right? Because those are the kind of people who don't think trans people exist because it's political and I don't want to talk about politics. And then when they can see a company like Nintendo say, see, they don't want politics in the game either, I'm going to construe that as they don't want trans people in my cyberpunk. And
Longest
obviously,
sigh ever.
Yeah, and obviously that's a huge logical leap, an extreme logical fallacy. But there are people out there that are going to make that dumb connection, even if it's subconsciously. They're going to see a big company like Nintendo saying no politics as affirmation that no other game should have politics either, because the big Nintendo man said it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think this is I don't think this is this is not at all a simple conversation. I don't think Nintendo, like, they're very obviously a very long running company at this point. They've been around for well over 100 years, right? You know, before they were making decks of cards and toys and stuff, before they ever made video games. So they come from a long line of being a traditional company. And then when they did get into video games, they do have a lot of long running IP that they adhere to from a first party perspective, right? So I think inherently, by the nature of those IPs, there's only so much they can do in terms of flexibility, in terms of themes and things like that, of showing, you know, whatever sort of political ideal, whether that's vague or more explicit. And so I think it's just I don't know. Nintendo's in this weird place where, like, I want to say it's not necessarily a bad thing that they're showing through their actions that they can be progressive rather than showing it on their platforms. But this I don't know. This is
it's a conundrum.
It's a tough one for me. Yeah, it is. It's a lot to think about. That's why I'm just kind of all over the place.
I mean, really I guess it comes down to, ultimately, I don't think any of us are surprised that it would be Nintendo that would do something like this, as far as just being like, hey, we're totally not involved in anything vaguely controversial. And as the last couple years have proven, like, politics are always going to be controversial. But in the end, like, that's they're allowed to do that. How they're going to enforce that, dunno. Are they going to actually enforce that? Also dunno.
Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is if they can get away with having, like, a middling stance and being this company, this brand that everyone likes, and it keeps them making money, they're not going to stop doing it. And there's not going to be anything to really stop them or change how they do things necessarily either. I mean, as long as people keep buying their games, as long as they keep making money, there's no incentive for them to change.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a good place to stop. As long as the capitalism machine keeps winning.
Yay, capitalism.
Keeps capitalisming.
Tom Nook will always get my bells.
Yeah, Tom Nook is the hero we all don't need.
Yeah. Got into some philosophical discussion there.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I think clearly, right, all three of us are in this weird place where we don't really have a big concluding theme here, because it's such a weird conundrum. Like, there are different levels of, I mean, first defining what does politics mean, and then what does Nintendo think politics mean, and then what does the audience think it means. Those three questions alone.
Messaging, tradition, not tradition, progressive,
right,
blah,
like
blah, blah.
That can change your understanding of all of this, right? And it's a lot for us to cover, and I think we're gonna have to put a pin in it here for this week's episode.
Yeah.
So we do hope you enjoyed. We hope at least made you think about yourself and where you fall in the political spectrum in relation to how you play your video games.
To Animal Crossing.
Yeah, or maybe it just changed the way you thought about those dinosaur fossils that you're stealing from the earth. I don't know.
There is a line about that at some point. It's like, hey, did you know that we're on, like, an ancient burial ground? Why do you think you're, like, digging up all those bones? Done and done.
You're appropriating the history of this land.
Years and years, eons before, there were little dinosaurs running around and trading fruit with their friends, and hanging out on the island long before you ever did.
Right. Yeah, that's what I know the dinosaurs as, those people who traded fruits with each other.
I don't know why I keep going with fruit. It's because I usually gift clothing items that then my villagers never wear. But they always appreciate fruit.
I mean, who doesn't appreciate a good fruit? And you know what we would appreciate? If you followed us on Twitter or subscribe to us on the YouTubes and smash the like button and all that other jazz.
Ding the bell.
Do that too. But save your own bells for your Animal Crossing island. We don't need those bells. We just need you to ding the one bell on YouTube. And, you know, let us know below. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? How do you feel about Nintendo saying, hey, no politics in Animal Crossing? Because I feel like that's such a, you know, I mean, we're only 3 people, and I'm sure there are many views out there that are just as interesting, if not even more interesting than we've got. And I'd be curious to know what you think. So DM us, email us, comment at us, and we'd love to read those. We'll be back next week with another episode of Everything in Poderation. And, you know, till then, stay safe, stay cozy. It's December. Enjoy the holidays. And we'll see you next week.